Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'd like to discuss whether Boris Johnson's short-term act of desperation to cling on to power for a few more weeks by removing what few defences we have against COVID won't harm the Tories' already weak defences against the damage being caused by Brexit. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So Brexit was a funny bunny during last year, because on the one hand, the impact of COVID in both the UK and around the world, combined with the impact of Brexit, actually made some things worse than might otherwise have been the case, especially given that we didn't actually erect trade barriers on our end. But the government also sought to hide the damage of Brexit behind the pandemic. So it was like Brexit was actually worse, but it was hidden from a lot of people. But in 2022, surely it should be much harder for them to do that for two reasons. Firstly, those trade barriers that weren't really erected last year are going up, or they're scheduled to go up. At the start of last year, the EU put in place their customs and standard checks on British imports. However, we did not do the same for the EU imports into Britain, giving EU businesses a huge competitive advantage. Now, at the start of this month, we did begin with our customs controls, or at least on EU imports coming directly into Britain. We're not applying them on anything coming from Ireland, citing the ongoing talks over the Northern Ireland Protocol. That could go on forever. Of course, this just invites smugglers, especially, to set up their smuggling routes through Ireland, really. It also gives Ireland a competitive advantage now, and customs isn't even the half of it. We are supposed to be applying standards checks from summer this year throughout the rest of the year. And I don't think any experts seriously think we will, because we don't have the staff or the systems to cope. I mean, we don't have the staff or the systems to cope with the customs checks that we're applying at the moment, hence the 10 to 15 mile tailbacks at the Dover-Calais border on both sides each day. But you need vets to manage the SPS checks that are supposed to be coming this summer. We don't have them. So as bad as Brexit hit us last year, it's going to bite harder this year, making it more noticeable. So it'll be bigger, almost big enough to emerge over COVID, but easier for those of us trying to talk about it to point things out as well. But then there's the second thing, because last year, as I say, you had Brexit, and then you had COVID, and COVID was large enough to obscure some Brexit to a lot of people. But the government are trying to now claim that COVID's not a problem. Never mind the 2,000 people dying a week, never mind the raging rise of infection amongst kids since schools returned with still no proper ventilation in place. Never mind the hospitals and GP surgeries that are breaking under the pressure. The government have announced that all restrictions are to end in England next week. Now, obviously, we know this is to save Boris Johnson's job for like a few more days or maybe weeks. That's all. But he has agreed to do what the far right of his party want, and making the point, no doubt, that, well, look, if you get rid of me, I could be replaced by someone who would crack and re-implement the measures later on. Stick with me, I'll see you right. But what it also means is that they will struggle to blame COVID for the economic problems and shortages that we will be facing. After all, if they've removed restrictions, like all restrictions, it means that COVID's no longer a serious problem, isn't it? And it is a serious question. Like, it sounds like it should be hypothetical, but it's not. This government and its handlers and stooges in the media are not above the odd dose of doublethink. They can easily try to tell us that Johnson has all but dealt with COVID now. Oh, hooray for Johnson, he's dealt with the pandemic marvellously. And rejoice for the final end of restrictions. Definitely final this time. Oh yeah, no going back this time. I know he said that before, but this time it's real. But also that any major problems people are experiencing, like, a shortage of goods or rising household bills, are the fault of COVID still. But it should be a lot harder for them to do so. They could try and blame other countries' handling of COVID in another weak attempt to point the finger at global pressures. And sure, most people won't take the trouble to discover that actually these shortages that I can see on my supermarket shelves are not replicated around Europe. It's only Britain that's suffering the shortages and rising prices to anything like the extent we are. But won't there come a point where people just get sick of the excuses and demand action? Doesn't there come a point where people go, look, you keep coming up with these reasons. Every year it's a different reason, right? At what point are you going to do something about it? Because Boris Johnson said, vote me a majority and I will have the power to deal with these problems. It's like, well, we gave you the power. Why aren't you dealing with them? Especially if Labour are at that point telling the public that they have plans to deal with it. Like in yesterday's PMQs, Keir Starmer used his final question to move on from giving the Prime Minister political wedges to once again pushing the issue of rising energy bills. He detailed the three main policies that Labour have to help address the issue, which involves lowering the cost to the public and making up the shortfall with a windfall tax on North Sea oil and gas. Starmer also pointed out that while he had these plans, Conservatives didn't have anything. And that isn't just because Johnson is dithering. Like, even when he's gone, what will his replacement do? At the end of the day, if you take money out of the system in one place, so if you reduce people's energy bills, you have to put that money in somewhere else. Labour's plan is to take it out at the lower income end, reducing people's bills, but put it back on the wealthy end. Redistribution of wealth, basically. But the Conservatives don't like this. They prefer to give the rich money and make the poor pay for it. Most of the time they get away with it because the poor somehow struggle on and then believe the lies that it's all the EU's fault. We're out of the EU now. The rising cost of a combination of Brexit and general economic mismanagement means that millions more are not going to be able to just struggle on. The only lever Boris Johnson is using to try and deal with the situation is the one labelled blind optimism. Basically, his only strategy is to hope that someone else sorts his problems out. That's what he's done with COVID. That's what he's done with Brexit. It's what he's done with everything. Just hope it all sorts itself out. Because that's what happens in his life. In his life, everything just sorts itself out. Even when he doesn't get what he wants, he doesn't suffer from it. So he lives his political life as he's lived his personal life, just getting through it. Just doing whatever, and it'll all sort itself out. You know, another Prime Minister might be more realistic, but that doesn't mean that they have more levers to pull. Because they tend to be, the levers they'll have available tend to be the ones that go against their reasons for being in politics. Like Rishi Sunak, for example, one favourite for the job, is an extremely wealthy individual. It's like the richest MP there's ever been. And he's already shown that he didn't come into politics to make life better for ordinary people. He's not like someone who's made his money and now wants to give back, like some do. He's in politics to help people like him cram even more wealth than they can possibly spend into their bank accounts. In 2021, I often got the impression that people were putting up with the privations of Brexit because they didn't think there was any alternative or were stuck with it now. A lot of people are quite pragmatic. There's no point in going on about something that can't be helped. But in 2022, a couple of things changed. The first is that the COVID excuses can't be used as effectively. Either the government have restrictions in place or they do not. If they do not, they cannot use them as an excuse for economic woes. They may try, but they've got no right to. The second is that Labour will be pushing their plans to deal with the various financial pressures hitting ordinary households. So it won't be a case of the government saying, well, there's nothing we can do about it. Labour will be going, well, we could do something about it. Why aren't we in charge? At the moment, they're pushing their plan for energy bills. They'll presumably push plans for grocery bills, fuel bills, taxes, any household expenditure as the year rolls merrily on as well. And on each occasion, whomever is running the Conservative government will be struggling to match the plans because they all involve making life easier for ordinary people, whom the Tories see as cash cows, and depriving the very wealthy of some taxes that they would never notice anyway. You know, is 2022 going to be the year when the Tories run out of road for running away from their extreme Tory Brexit, basically? I did see someone comment that they'll just probably switch to blaming Labour again for the mess. But the thing is, the longer you're in power, it sort of works early on. And it works for far too long. But the longer you're in power, the less effective those claims are. I mean, even supposing it were true, after 12 years in power, if you haven't been able to clear up the alleged mess, and life is just getting harder for voters, won't they think that maybe it's better the devil you don't know? But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.